And now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for staying tuned to the second hour of the show. And we've been talking to Jerry Pippin of jerrypippin.com about UFOs, and we're going to get into some other stuff here as we move forward. But please do go check out, my website, www.soulhealer.com, or the radio website, www.justenergyradio.com, just check them out. But also go to Jerry's website. He does have tons of archives of shows that he's done with a lot of great people in the UFO paranormal community. That's www.jerrypippin.com, but I'm sure he'll tell you all about that later. Right, Jerry?
Oh, you bet. we never miss a chance to get in a plug.
I know, but I went to the commercial break. We went to the commercial break, and you weren't saying jerrypippin.com while I was trying to do my little exit thing. I was surprised.
You're a doll.
Okay. So before we went to break, we had just touched on the topic of Dulce, New Mexico, and so we've only done, I think, one show, and that was with Edmund Gomez talking about the cattle mutilations. So maybe you could bring the listeners a little bit up to speed of what is believed is going on in that area, as well as what your revelations of the last couple of weeks have been.
Okay, well, first of all, most people probably are not familiar with Dulce. It's a town on an Indian reservation, and it's right next to Osceola Mesa, which is a really very scenic part of the country of northern New Mexico, which is very pretty and very mysterious, and lots of high strangeness has happened there. Native legends, stories of Bigfoot, cattle mutilations, as you mentioned, and many other things, just mirages of beings appearing and disappearing, and lots of reports of flying craft, flying disc, if you may, over the years have been reported there as well. Now, if you took Osceola Mesa and drew a line, you would find that it would probably be logical to assume, because there was back, they called it Project Gas Buggy, in which they literally, now this is a pretty far out reason for the Bureau of Landmines and Energy Department to release, but they did, and released it with a straight face. And that was that they were doing an underground nuclear explosion to free up natural gas to make it possible for natural gas to be mined in New Mexico, in northern New Mexico. And a lot of people say that was a nuclear explosion, all right. And there's evidence that it was, because there's still Geiger counter readings that show it. But they feel that they were digging an underground tunnel operation, an underground base operation from Los Alamos, the secret place where the nuclear weapon itself was developed, all the way down to Kirkland Air Force Base, Sandia Base, which is an Army base close to there, down around Albuquerque, and all the way up to northern New Mexico to a place called Dulce. Now, there have been rumors, and there have been many people that have come out and said that they have seen extraterrestrials at that base. And there have been stories written. Anthony Sanchez has written a pretty interesting book called UFO Highway, in which he discussed and was on the air with us many times. And Rita, you know Anthony, I think you're going out to his conference, right?
I am. It's actually just in a couple of weeks, June 6th, 17th and 18th in
it's
Sacramento,
UFO
California.
Summit.
It's like, yeah. Well, we've tried to have Anthony come on the show a couple of times, and I don't know what has been going on, but it just seems like it goes kaput. So I'm trying to get him back on the show probably in September, but we haven't worked out that detail.
Yeah, he's a good guy, and we were talking about the emotional hot buttons people are pushing in the UFO business on the top of the show at the last hour, and how this is probably dirty tricks by somebody orchestrating it all. And Anthony's been at the heart of several of these episodes against him. And the reason all of this is happening is because maybe Anthony's onto something.
Mm-hmm.
His thesis about Dulce is basically that he found a guy that we're calling Colonel X, who reveals that Dulce, New Mexico, has been a natural underground base for the Greys for 25,000 years. And that they have found inside that the exploration they've done there, they've got evidence that the ETs were around in the before the Civil War. I mean, those kind of weapons were inside that natural cavern at Osama Mesa. Now, what has made this so mysterious? And we have people who have come forward and talked about the fact that they've had a battle, literally with special forces and black ops against the ETs, and it's been raging for some time. And it's the ETs are on the 7th floor down in this base in Osama Mesa. Now, we can't verify any of that. But, Anthony Sanchez has a very interesting thesis with a lot of documentation that he says that these Greys came here and they were beings created by another group. And after they got through using them, they sent them to Earth here because they figured that the radiation from the sun would kill these people because they were very sensitive. And so the Greys outsmarted them by going underground and have survived there all these years. And we keep hearing stories about the Greys there may not be as nice a group of ETs and figures of light as a lot of people would like to say, and that they literally have, and there's been some evidence that there has been a crashed UFO down about 100 miles from that area, that they found some leftover arms and legs and torsos of human beings. So not only are there cattle mutilations going on, but perhaps there are also human mutilations. Now, you mentioned Ed Gomez. He's got some pretty good evidence. It's perhaps the federal government is using this area, which is very remote, and they are testing biological weapons, and then they come along and mutilate the cattle to find out that information. But there's also the extraterrestrial element, which I'm more inclined to believe. And even though that sounds pretty ridiculous on the surface of it, but if you start examining the evidence, there may not be any other explanation. So there have been many people who have been really researching more than others on Dulce, and Anthony Sanchez is one of them. Also, another one is Norio Hayakawa, who lives in Rio Rancho, which is right outside Albuquerque. And Norio, and I go all the way back to the late 80s when he actually, I was at KVEG in Las Vegas, 50,000-watt AM station, covered 11 states. And the guy on after me did UFOs every night, Billy Goodman, who's since passed away. And I would do an occasional UFO show, but I was doing general subjects and mainly entertainment, broadcasting from casino locations most of the time. And but I got interested in, because I was always interested in UFOs, but I got interested in that because of Billy Goodman, because he organized a bus trip up to Groom Lake at Area 51 in Norio, Iowa, took that bus trip. So Norio and I go all the way back to then, and Norio's made it a major occupation of his to investigate Dulce. And Norio and I were talking about 3 weeks ago about something, and I thought we found something, because all of a sudden we were getting reports from the little lake outside Dulce that the fish were dying, the trout were beaching themselves. And so we, naturally piqued our information. But unfortunately, we checked. It was also happening in Idaho and parts of Colorado. And there's a thing, you might know about it, Rita, since you're down by Dallas. Here in Oklahoma, it happens quite often. To use the local vernacular, the lake turns over. Mm-hmm. In other words, the algae and everything goes to the top, and the top goes to the bottom, and the fish die as a result of that. And it looks like that probably what was happening, unfortunately, from our standpoint of looking for a conspiracy story. So we love to do conspiracy stories, but we do try to check them out, at least so that we can do the shows with a straight face. And we run across many, many stories that turn out just like that. And that's what happened this time. It was much ado about nothing. It was just the lake turning over, evidently, because the Idaho Fish and Game Commission and also the Colorado Fish and Game Commission had released a statement about the lakes turning over. So that's probably what it was. But to answer your question about Dulce, it's probably a black operations base. It could be a part of an underground tunnel system. Anthony Sanchez, you mentioned, and he's not the only one. There's others that say there's a tunnel system all the way to down around Fresno, down around Lake Tehachapi, Edwards Air Force Base, and it goes all the way back over into New Mexico to Los Alamos.
I don't doubt that. I mean, because they found tunnels that run from, I forget, Tiwanaku to Cusco in South America, so why would they just be isolated there? But I'm going to Anthony and I were having a conversation about his book, and it was before I was as far done with my new book, Man-Made, Chronicles of Our Extraterrestrial Gods, and it really looks at mythology. And one of the things that, because he was saying, the base at Dulce has 7 levels, but you can only go down to the 3rd level. And I'm going to share this with you, which I don't know that I shared with him, but I think you'll find this interesting. In mythology, they talk about 7 levels of the underworld, and in the bottom level I call them the snake people. Modern UFO people would probably call them the reptilians. Which I don't like using that word, but anyway, but the snake people live in the bottom level, and they are the ruler people in mythology, not the gray.
These stories come up in a lot of cultures.
Yeah,
and it's interesting that the snake people, or the snake, even biblically, the snake was walking around before he was destined to go on his belly and crawl because of talking Eve into having an apple. And so you look at these things, and as I said in the top of the hour, the other show, the last hour we were doing, my opinion is when you hear a lot of stories, there's smoke, there's got to be fire someplace. In other words, there has to be a basis for these stories to promulgate themselves. And we should probably not dismiss them. And I'm not saying we need to grab them and say they're made of whole cloth and say this is the Holy Grail, but I'm saying there's something to it. And
but you go ahead.
No,
but when you find stories like that coming out of mythology that support what you're finding now, in addition to what you're finding now, it says that this phenomena has been going on far longer in time than we want to give it credit. It's not something that just started in 1947. It's something that has been here on this planet, for longer.
I agree with you, and I basically think that it's a very simple matter that these prehistoric, or maybe that's not the right word, early historical statements and rumors and innuendos we hear, even of vampires, have a basis on something else. And I think that a man in a civilization of 10,000 years ago, if they saw, like the spaceships of Ezekiel, that was a good book, and it's about the book of Ezekiel, and pretty much does sound like they're describing a spaceship. I think, man with his knowledge at that point would simply say they're gods. Why wouldn't he? What else would he say they were? And so I think this has been going on for a long time. Now, whether or not there have been grays in the Archuleta Mesa Basin, the underground base there outside Dulce, for 25,000 years, I don't know. Anthony certainly believes it. Colonel X, who was in charge of that area at one time from the military, he believes it. Maybe that's the reason we don't come clean on UFOs, is maybe it's too much of a challenge to our culture.
But it also says that maybe we're not in control of it.
And I disagree with that idea. I think that you could take any fundamentalist religion of today, and when and if an extraterrestrial makes himself public, within a couple of weeks, they will have adjusted their message accordingly. And you look some of the writings in the Catholic Church these days. They're talking about a bishop recently talked about the idea that when we explore outer space, we find other extraterrestrials. They'll need to be saved as well. So and the religion itself will adapt. And this is, I'm not being jaded about religion at this point. You have a right to worship what you want and believe what you want. And because nobody has the real facts. It goes back to what we were talking about abductions and UFOs and paranormal. None of us have the real facts. And when we do have the real facts, we probably don't recognize it because of our biases and our ideas and what we've wanted to know. Rita, today's June 1st, and it's a pretty important date, and a lot of people don't realize it. And I'll tell you why it is. There's a little thing happening over in the North Sea in Europe, and they had a group of divers get together. They've been talking about doing this for a while. And they left Stockholm in Sweden this morning, and they're going out to the North Sea, and they're going to go to a location in which there have been pictures and photographs of something lying on the bottom of the ocean. And the pictures that come back all seem to indicate that it's a UFO. And it's been laying there for some time. And for some reason, they haven't been able to get out there to take a look at it. Nobody really knows if that's a shipwreck or a UFO, some mysterious object that's discovered deep beneath the Baltic Sea. And the treasure hunters left this morning to go find it, and they're scratching their heads, but they can't wait to get there. We have their email addresses at jerrypippin.com. And we've contacted them, and we are going to see if we can't get the first information on exactly what's happening. One of the divers has 20 years of experience. He was down on the bottom, saw nothing like this. And I'm talking about a commercial diver himself, and I believe his name is Peter Lindbergh. In fact, he was on CNN, the leader of the team, of the deep sea salvage group, and they were talking about this possible UFO being at the bottom of the sea. So when you talk about the media not necessarily reporting on UFOs, I think that's changing somewhat, don't you, Rita?
I think, I just saw that picture this morning, and, when people post stuff on Facebook, sometimes you have to, or anywhere, you have to kind of look at it and go, okay, so is this a real thing? Like someone had posted recently that they found a crystal pyramid in the Bahamas somewhere, and it's, but then there was an artist reproduction of what the pyramid would look like, which to me says, okay, it's not really much. And I couldn't tell from the picture if it was an actual image or, side sonar image or what that was. And I'm really glad that you brought that up, because if the image is an actual picture of what they saw down there, someone made the comment, it looks like the Millennium Falcon, which was, what's his name, from Star Wars, his ship. But it does look like a ship, not a natural rock formation. How's that?
Well, I guess a lot of people, we see things on Facebook especially. You're right, that have been doctored up. I get pictures all the time about things but there's a danger in that as well, and that is we become so jaded that we think everything's fake. Mm-hmm. And I would say they're using this sidebar scanner to measure nearly 200 feet in diameter, something down there. It's generated out of this world speculation. Now, whether or not the object is something we're going to find, I guess when Peter and his group get down there, we'll find out if it's really true or not. But the problem there is, if they come back and say, yeah, it was nothing but a strange rock or whatever, nobody's going to believe that either, simply because they say, well, the government has been, hiding things forever. And there is a fact that the Russian and U.S. Government evidently are having some sort of operational war games going on about the same time, so that means that they could be keeping a lookout to see what's happening. Some of this says it's, as you mentioned, the Millennium Falcon, and so I don't know. We'll find out. That's the reason we wrote him an email, and the reason we're going to try to stay in touch with him.
And how far down was it?
How far down is it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Did I say how far down it was? I'm not sure. 200 feet is how long it is.
Okay. Well, I'm just curious, if it's not like there's the monument in Japan, where there's been a lot of divers that have gone and checked it out because it's not really deep in the water, so it makes it pretty accessible. So I'm curious, because if it's not that deep, then more researchers that are not like deep sea scuba people can go check it out, unless, of course, it becomes an off-limits place, which could happen. But then if it's been down there for quite a while, it makes you wonder if we're just seeing the very top of it and there's not something even bigger underneath the dirt.
Oh, you're right. It may be an underground city.
Ooh. Or it could be a bigger ship. 200 feet is big, but, could be bigger. I don't know. Just speculating.
Anyway, it's in the Baltic Ocean, and it's, I don't know. I'm not an oceanologist, so I don't know. Oceanographer, but whatever you want to call them, but we'll find out. And part of the reason we here would probably not know a lot about that over the previous years is until recently, Russia hasn't been very open about all these things. They are now. I notice this is off the subject a little bit, but I notice where the Dow Jones is dropping like a rock this afternoon.
Oh, I try not to pay attention to that because it's just...
So
yeah.
Anyway, we try to stay up with all subjects all the time, so I just thought I'd throw that in. Let you know that I know.
So I'm just going to totally shift gears here, and let's talk a little politics. We have a half hour left. Let's talk a little politics. Let's see, where do I want to start? So when the last time we tried to have you on, actually it was quite a while ago, but you were starting into
hold on
this illness
before we go
thing.
any further. You know Jane Swartley. Mm-hmm. She worked with you at the booth there in Roswell. Mm-hmm. She's our web producer. And a very efficient person. She just said it's 99 meters deep. 99
meters, okay. Okay, so that's
now
how
let's
far
get
it's
to politics.
Down. Okay. So one of the things that I wanted to pick your brain, or, it almost seems like old news now, is new news back then, but it's kind of old news now, is the whole Osama bin Laden thing. I mean, they, SEAL Team 6 went in there and got rid of him. I don't even know any other way to say it. They just got rid of him. But what do you think happened, and what do you think was their motivation? And do you think that bin Laden was even still alive? I mean, because that's even part of the whole mix, was he really died in 2002 and 2003, and this was just some other schmuck that they eliminated.
Let me tell you right off the bat that for some reason this is going to be a conspiracy just like JFK, and it's all the government's doing. And even if they did what they said they were doing, and we can talk about the moral issues about that a little bit later if you want, but even if it was just exactly what they said, then why in the world did they do it the way they did it? In the first place, bin Laden, and now a lot of people are going to resent what I'm going to say here, but we got to stop and think about what America is before we go any further. And America is, or was supposed to be, or rumored to be, a place where we always gave people the ability to defend themselves in court, to face their defenders, and then by the rule of law, evidence would be laid out about why they were guilty of the crime. Well, unfortunately, we didn't give bin Laden that opportunity. And that's not because I'm saying we didn't protect bin Laden. I'm saying that if you stop and think about it, the 9/11 issues, which I've been involved in for a long time, all would come to a screeching halt basically when bin Laden came into court and we had to prove why we thought he did something. And we didn't do that. And why didn't we do that? Now that's the question. If there's a conspiracy, why did we, from all accounts, bin Laden, when the SEALs broke into that place, this man rumored to be bin Laden, and I say it that way simply because, and you alluded to it, Rita, we don't know if it was bin Laden. We would have known it was bin Laden if we'd have captured him and taken him and put him into court. All of a sudden, we were told that it was bin Laden, and we were told by some of the witnesses there that bin Laden was giving himself up, that the jig was up, so to speak, and he gave up. And then one of the SEALs shot him. Now, why did they do that? Seems to me that if we look over the history of law enforcement and military actions, this person that they said was bin Laden, and it might well have been bin Laden. It's kind of strange to me that his family's going along with the idea that it was bin Laden. Evidently they are, at least. I don't know that they can control the media that much, but maybe they can. But it looks to me like it might have been bin Laden. But here again, if it were bin Laden, why did we have to go dispose of the body at sea immediately? Now, we can use the Muslim argument about, we're honoring the body all we want. But in the first place, we didn't honor the body to begin with. We didn't take him in and let him face the rule of law and face the charges and find out what the real deal was and convict him in a fair and impartial jury. We didn't do it. We took this man, shot him in the head, put him on a helicopter, and flew him 500 miles to the ocean and dropped him in there. Now, why did we do that? I mean, look, they had Gaddafi there. He's a Muslim, and they put his body on display, and everybody saw him the next day. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, come on. What's the secret there? Then can we really get DNA evidence that fast? Has anybody ever seen the DNA? Yeah. Then we come up with a whole idea. The Associated Press went to the Pentagon after all this had calmed down a year later, and they asked for some pictures and other information, freedom of information, some tests, the DNA test, all of that from the Pentagon. And guess what the freedom of information reply was? We don't have any of that information. It never existed. Now, that story came out on the Associated Press. Some newspapers printed it. Some television stations ran it. Some radio stations ran it. But I don't think anybody ran it as a headline. To me, it seems to me that would be a big story. Now,
well, you think?
Or am I pointing the finger at Obama that he did this as a public thing? Not necessarily. When you stop and think about how government is run, just like how any operations run, I mentioned just seconds ago to you about Jane Swartley, who does a lot of work for me. And as far as I know, she's an honest, straight-worthy person. But what if she came to me and told me something else, and she's had a record of telling me nothing but the truth? Why would I ever question it? And so why would Obama question the fact that this is Osama bin Laden? Okay, now let's take two scenarios here about Osama bin Laden. Was that really him in the house, or was it not him really in the house? And there's a good argument for both. First of all, there's a lot of evidence out here that Osama bin Laden has been dead for some time. And you alluded to that earlier, and that he was on kidney dialysis. Now, you can take kidney dialysis it was a little tough to think about it and getting it in that cave there at Bora Bora, but you can have home dialysis. You can do that. But doctors have to know about it. So if he didn't have kidney dialysis, didn't have a kidney disease, what were those pictures about him looking like death warmed over all about? Who did those? And then we have the history of the CIA releasing all these Osama bin Laden tapes with lots of evidence that it probably wasn't Osama bin Laden to begin with. Now, does that mean the CIA was sitting around making these things up? Not necessarily. They are taking evidence that they were told was Osama bin Laden and they release it. Now, I know that sounds oversimplification, but I know how the government works. I know how the corporations work. I know how it works. People, when they are asked questions, they give answers. And sometimes those answers are not necessarily the correct answers simply because they've been told something that's not true. Now, how in the world could the Pentagon say there are no pictures of Osama bin Laden getting killed when we saw that famous press release with Hillary Clinton holding a hand up over her mouth and all of the Obama cabinet watching him being assassinated. Now, to me, that does not speak very highly of the moral character of some of the people I've backed politically for decades. Why would you want to sit around and watch somebody get killed?
I don't know. I've had a very similar argument with several other people.
Morally superior. And have we lost America completely? Our way, our compass to morality? It appears that perhaps we have. It appears to me that we no longer, nobody seems to be shocked that Obama, who by all records, despite what his critics say about him, is a good and decent man, or appeared to be, why is he going out and okaying us to have predators and CIA assassins knock people off without a trial? Who's deciding who's guilty here? How many? Well, we can take almost any trial, any place, and many times the things that we've heard about in the pre-trial information just doesn't pan out when you get under the jury and they start testifying under oath about things. And when we look at these things, just because the government or any police official says you're guilty of something doesn't mean you are. We have seen this happen over and over and over. So that's the first scenario. If that was really Obama, why did we kill him without a trial? And if it was really Obama, somebody had to know he was living in the safe house in Pakistan all these years. And does that back up the whole hypothesis of why we got into Afghanistan and why 9/11 happened to begin with? It appears to me a lot of people made money and cemented power over the incidents since 9/11. Mm-hmm. Now, does that mean that of course they're guilty? Not necessarily, but it certainly opens up the question that we should investigate more thoroughly, and we haven't. And we
what
talked
makes
about
me
UFOs.
curious is who gave the order to dump the body. I mean, I would think that wouldn't be a standard protocol to just dump a body of that kind of figure.
That's exactly right. We got away with the evidence. They did it right in front of our eyes. If it wasn't Osama bin Laden, then that explains why they did that more than anything else. And that's the second scenario I was getting to. The fact that if it wasn't Osama bin Laden, whoever this fellow was, no wonder he gave himself up when the Navy SEALs came in. There's just a lot of unanswered questions, and unfortunately, nobody's trying to talk. And right now we're getting to, I think, the heart of what the problem is with the American dream today. And that is that we've lost our moral compass. And now it's not a recent thing. From Kennedy on, and probably before that, maybe even Pearl Harbor, we have been told one story, and it becomes actually history, gets in the history books, and the story is fiction from the beginning. And so if people want to believe the magic bullet of Lee Harvey Oswald, fine. There's an interesting book coming out now about the fact that one of John F. Kennedy's girlfriends, who was well connected in Washington and died within 2 weeks of the time of the Warren Commission because she made a public statement she didn't believe any of it and that she knew the real truth. These stories keep coming out. They keep coming out, and Ben Bradley, who was related to her, a Washington Post editor showed up at her apartment trying to find some paperwork when she died mysteriously, and he kept running across the same CIA agent, James Eagleton. And James Eagleton had been involved deeply in not only that, but in the UFO cover-up for the CIA. He was a banker by day and a CIA agent at night. And I think that speaks volumes about what we're talking about here, about conspiracies all the way. Bankers and money, and look how much money has been made since 9/11, and how much money has been made off of Osama bin Laden by military contractors, by military suppliers, by military corporations, and the whole thing stinks to high heaven. But I have not heard any outrage. I would not, I've not heard any outrage about what we did to Osama bin Laden, and of course not, because he's kind of like Jesse James. So what? He shot him when he was hanging a picture. He was a no good bum, and I don't know.
I mean, I had issues about that whole scenario. I mean, if his compound was filled with people and there was a big shooting match going on and he was just a casualty, that would have been one thing, and it would have been acceptable in my mind. But it didn't sound, he had one bodyguard and his wife. Woo-hoo. I'm sure they put up a really big fight, to not get caught. It's just a very sad scenario of how the whole thing played out. But where I want to go, though, with the whole 9/11, you're talking about the money with 9/11, but what also came in with that was the increased crackdown with security, TSA, Homeland Security, and invasion of privacy.
And look, not only did it cement power for those groups, but those powers in today's society are privatization, cover stories, simply because TSA is a private organization. They get lots of money from lots of people to operate these things. And I don't know if you know how the government pays these companies that do third-party things for them. They get a fee on top. And if there's income involved, they get 15% there, and then all they can steal. So, I mean, we hear all these arguments every day about the budgets, and we got to cut this, and we got to cut mom and dad and grandpa out, get them out of the nursing home. We can't afford to pay them anymore. And at the same time, we're spending much more money, triple, 4 times, 5 times as much, on these things like security agencies, that the corporations that are hired to operate. If you examine the budgets of the terrorism apparatus and how the government pays for it, you'd see that well over 2/3 of the budget goes to third parties who then do the work. And we haven't even discussed some of the other things we've been doing in 9/11, and that's torturing people routinely. And you have people of well-respected credentials getting on television talking about, well, if we could save another 3,000 people, why not torture somebody? Well, that's really not apples and oranges. The question is, do we want to be doing what's right, or we want to do what is wrong? And do we want to do what is wrong to make things right? Well, 2 wrongs don't make a right in my book, and they never have. And when you let people get away with maybe doing a little waterboarding here, or maybe hooking this guy up to some electric wires a couple of times, what the heck? He's no good anyway. Pretty soon that's pretty routine. Pretty soon it doesn't bother them anymore. It's pretty much
they're
the
building
same.
a FEMA camp right down the street from us. Well, all right, not right down the street, but about 20 minutes from us. They're putting in a FEMA camp.
Yeah, you wonder what they're doing. FEMA ordered all of these shells I don't know if you knew about that. They ordered an ungodly amount of ammunition, and they bought it. They got it paid for by the budget. Now, what are they using that for? Who are they going to be shooting?
We were talking to this one guy. I don't know. We met at a concert, and he said that because he likes to shoot guns, just for a hobby kind of thing. And he says that buying ammunition has been difficult because the government has been buying it all up.
Well, it was a matter of record. FEMA admitted how much they bought. I don't have it in front of me right now. It was an unbelievable amount. They could line people up all day and fire and fire and fire and probably not use it all. So who's okaying that?
But what are in your opinion, what are the camps for? I mean, why are they building these things? Who are they going to put in them? Hopefully not me and you, although we could hang out because, we'd probably be in the same one. But
yeah. Well, there's a lot of unanswered questions that nobody's asking questions about, and that's one of the. I'm going to say something here that maybe people will wonder why I say it, but I'll try to explain it. And all these things we were just talking about, 9/11, JFK, Osama bin Laden, the war in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq, which everybody knows was started under false pretenses now. None of that was true. And nobody's paid a price for that. All of that, we can hold all these people responsible, and I think they are war criminals. But really, the real problem is the media.
Mm-hmm.
The media has not done its job. The media evidently, there's lots of good people in the media. I've been in the media all my life. I know a lot of people that don't agree with me that I respect highly about the 9/11 story about Osama bin Laden, but they never really asked the questions. They just took the government's handout of the press release at face value.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the way it works, or should have worked. America became a great institution and a great country and a great power in the world because people asked questions and they felt that we were doing the right thing, even if we made a mistake. Our intentions were right. Well, nobody believes that about us now. Go around the world. You and I on the internet, we have international listeners.
Mm-hmm.
And what they think and what Americans think are totally different. And the reason is because we're not getting the information. And we can go over why that's happening, but the major reason is one reason and one reason only, and it's because the pursuit of a plutocracy. A plutocracy is where the rich and famous run something. They do it for their interest. And we have the 99% movement now against the 1%. And I think they're actually on the right track, but many people are paying much attention to it. The point is that we have lost all of our moral compass because of the pursuit of the almighty dollar. And we have found out that it's much easier to make money by using the government and by using fair tactics. I mean, when I went to college, nobody wanted to go to work for the government. They didn't pay much. And the college didn't offer any degrees in it. Now every university in America offers degrees on how to work for the United States government, how to become a contractor, how to benefit from it. It's a big sugar daddy, and it's not the big sugar daddy for the welfare recipients, for the welfare moms and all of that. It's a big sugar daddy for big business. I mean, just recently, it became out that the oil companies, if you tax them just fairly like everyone else, then we probably wouldn't have any debt at all. Meanwhile, they're still charging $4 a gallon, or pretty close to it. And where did that money come from? It's pretty obvious that when you go to fill up your tank in your car of gasoline today, $22 of that, it goes to speculation. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean people who have bidded on the price of the oil at the barrel. They bidded up the price of the commodity on the gasoline itself. And it's all, when we say bid it up, what I'm saying is they've added their own little profit margin in there. And you got 3 or 4 or 5 times it's bidded before it ever gets to the market. So all of a sudden, we're paying a lot of people a lot of money for doing nothing. I know when we used to talk about, when I was a young man, I used to think about what would be good careers. Advertising was a good career, and selling insurance was a good career. Now, let me tell you why I say that. Both of those jobs have something in common, and that is if you're an insurance agent and you sell somebody some insurance, you keep getting residuals over and over as they keep renewing and renewing. So you didn't do much work for that. And advertising, it's the same way. I get a good account, put it on jerrypippin.com or put it on the Rita Louise show. They renew. I didn't do much more business to get renewed and on, but I still get a commission. And that's exactly how we work in America now. Everybody's trying to figure out how they can make a lot of money for nothing. And so we got 5 media giants running everything. And out of the 5, at least 3 of them, in my opinion, of those corporations are up to no good, not only making extensive profits by laying everybody off, no longer paying anybody a decent wage. They call it a nice little fancy word, maximizing profits. And what it is cutting out the middleman, cutting out the little guy, don't pay anybody. And so you go to Wharton Business School, they used to teach ethics. They don't teach it anymore. Now they teach you that the main thing is to get that margin from what it costs to do business to what you're making to do business as wide as possible, and for you to keep it in the family, in the corporation, as much as possible. And so what we have is, I tell you a good example, and we're almost out of time here, but what we have here is a fact that if you just look at the Justice Department, people who work for the United States Department of Justice, talking about prosecuting, I'm talking about lawyers, they don't stay prosecutors long. Guess where they all go? They go to Washington, D.C., they work as a top-notch prosecutor for a while, and the next thing you know, they're working for a big bank, or they're working for Wall Street itself, or they're working for an insurance company or a pharmaceutical company. They're not prosecuting anymore. I don't care how great they were. They found, the corporations found out they hired the prosecutors to find out what they were doing so they can make sure they don't get caught.
Mm-hmm.
It's very simple. And
hey, Jerry,
until we get somebody
in
office that is really interested, and it may be impossible now.
They'll just take them out.
Everybody's a paid spokesman for some money interest. Anyway, end of my lecture. And to answer your question, I don't think it was Osama bin Laden, but if it was, why in the hell did they do all that? Why didn't they just tell us? Why didn't they have an open trial?
I don't know. I thought, assassination was against the Geneva Convention or against something somewhere. I thought that was, illegal.
And the sad problem in my part, the sad situation is that nobody cares. They let these people do whatever they want to do. They create these tragedies, they create these crises, then they do something about it, and they're heroes.
All right, Jerry, we need to go, so tell everybody how they can get a hold of you.
JerryPippin.com.
All right.
JerryPippin.com.
As always,
I've enjoyed it.
I've enjoyed it too, Jerry, and I will talk to you later, okay?
Okay.
All right, bye. That's Jerry Pippin of SherryPippin.com. And next week, we are going to be having Sam Osminagosh talking about some updates from the Bosnian pyramids. And in the second hour, we're going to have C.K. Quarterman talking about giants, UFOs, and the New World Order. And so until next week, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. This is Just Energy Radio. Be blessed.
Join host Dr. Rita Louise each